Hello viewers, welcome to In Conversation with Taha. Today I have the Honorable MP from Peterborough, Mr. Paul Bristow, in my show. We will be talking about Conservative Friends of Kashmir. Welcome, Mr. Paul Bristow, to my show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Mr. Bristow, you have recently launched, or let's say relaunched, the Conservative Friends of Kashmir. What is the idea behind launching this organization?
Well, there are lots of people living in the UK who are part of the Kashmiri diaspora. And many Conservative MPs were elected at the last election in 2019 who have significant Kashmiri diaspora populations. And we have to find an avenue. We have got to do better in the Conservative Party to make sure that those of Kashmiri origin feel welcome in the Conservative Party and they see that our party as a vehicle for them. If they believe in Conservative values, they need to come to the Conservative Party and join us. And so this is why this organisation's been set up, really, to try and bring more Kashmiris into the Conservative Party.
Your fellow colleague and fellow MP, Bob Blackman, he went on to say to your party, the Conservative Party, that Conservative Friends of Kashmir should not be recognized because India recognizes Jammu and Kashmir as a part of India, an integral part of India, whereas the United Nations says it's a disputed territory between three nations, not even two now. So what do you have to say to that?
Bob's perfectly entitled to his view, but it's a view I reject. Now, we've made a decision, the chair of the joint chair, myself, James Daly is the MP for Bury North, and my other parliamentary colleagues, because there's quite a few of us now. There's over a dozen MPs who are supportive of this, not to directly affiliate to the Conservative Party, because it allows us to do things that we would want to do, that we wouldn't be able to do if we were directly affiliated. And that's, for example, take a different viewpoint on foreign policy, for example. I personally believe that Kashmir, the dispute in Kashmir, is something that not many people are aware of in this country. I don't think it's a dispute which many people in the world are given enough focus. So I think it's perfectly relevant for myself, my other parliamentary colleagues, to be able to talk about human rights abuses in Kashmir and talk about those things, as well as, you say, bringing an avenue to which so many of the Kashmiri diaspora here in the UK can get involved in the Conservative Party. I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing. Bob has his view. We've decided we didn't want to affiliate with the Conservative Party directly, but we want to have an organisation, as I say, which we can garner support from the Kashmiri diaspora here in the UK.
So you say you have relaunched the Conservative Friends of Kashmir. What happened to Conservative Friends of Kashmir in the past few years?
Well, the Conservative Friends of Kashmir was set up quite a few years ago, and a lot of the people who were involved in that organisation are still involved now. So those are Conservative Party members from the Kashmiri diaspora across the country. That includes Jack Brereton, who's the MP for Stoke-on-Trent South, who I think initially started the group. And because we now have a dozen or so MPs who have an interest in the region, we've decided to give it a relaunch. It's as simple as that. It's the same organisation, same people involved, but we're going to give it much more significant prominence and hopefully open it up to the millions of people in the UK who are part of the Kashmiri diaspora.
So you said that, a lot of people around the world and specifically in the UK do not know much about the Kashmir dispute. What I want to ask you is, when do you think, in your opinion, all of this started in Kashmir? When did the dispute start, or how did the movement start, and what year do you think it all started?
Well, it started obviously when Britain left India, and the partition took place shortly thereafter. And there was obviously a dispute about how Kashmir, which country Kashmir decided to become a part of, Kashmir and Jammu, whether it became part of Pakistan or whether it became part of India. So obviously there was the UN decided that there should be a plebiscite, a vote to determine where that country or where Kashmir and Jammu would, which country would join. And that plebiscite has never taken place. But we're far beyond all of that now. What we're interested in now is a situation where the people of Kashmir and Jammu can live in peace, can live in security, can have the same economic prospects as other people. Kashmir and Jammu are beautiful parts of the world. We need to think about how it can economically develop. And we obviously need a lasting settlement to some of the disputes that go on in there. And I think it's absolutely right that those with an interest in Kashmir and Jammu from the UK have a vehicle by which they can talk about these issues. And that's what the Conservative Friends of Kashmir are all about. And by the way, we stand in solidarity with the hundreds of millions of Indians who care about human rights as well.
So, like you said, people do not know much about the dispute. I would like to highlight one or 2 points there. The actual movement in Kashmir started in 1931, when 23 unarmed people were gunned down in the Maharaja's time, before even the British took over India. British left India. And in 1932, a lot of prominent Kashmiri Pandits had written to the Maharaja that their jobs are at stake because of the Muslim uprising. So this is where the dispute started from. I will take you to the next part of my question, which is the plebiscite that you just talked about. The plebiscite was promised by India to the Kashmiri people. Why do you think this plebiscite hasn't taken place till today?
Well, I'm not going to get into a history lesson if I'm being honest with you. You can tell me, I'm sure, from a perspective about how certain events took place in Kashmir and Jammu. I think the facts are this. What this organisation is all about is creating a vehicle for British Kashmiris to join the Conservative Party. It's also a vehicle by which we can talk about human rights abuses and human rights issues in Kashmir and Jammu. And it's also a vehicle by which we can talk about how the people of Kashmir and Jammu can be represented and have their voice heard in the future. So many of my constituents in Peterborough have friends, have families from that part of the world. And they're now living under lockdown. They can't talk to their family and friends. They can't be in touch with their family and friends. And I think that is a bad thing. And I certainly think that my constituents from the Kashmiri diaspora need a vehicle by which to talk about those issues and join the Conservative Party. And you know something? Those values and those principles are supported by millions of people of Indian origin, not just across the world, but here in the UK too.
Okay. Now, like we were talking about the plebiscite, actually it was India who had initiated the plebiscite issue, but Jawaharlal Nehru in 1954 withdrew that plebiscite because Pakistan and US formed a defense alliance. But like you said, it's in history. Let's talk about the present day. Why do you think there is such a big issue between India, Pakistan, and now China, which has become a big stakeholder? And recently, India and China are at loggerheads in a place called Aksai Chin,
Yes.
where China has taken about 1,000 to 1,200 square kilometers from India.
But because I think China are an aggressive power. And I think they're an aggressive power when it comes to economics. And I think they're an aggressive power when it comes to territorial ambitions as well. And look, this is an incredibly important conflict because we're not talking about two nuclear powers. You quite rightly identified, we're talking about three nuclear powers. And the world needs to give this part of the world much more attention because the risks of this part of the world becoming deeply unstable, well, they don't bear thinking about, do they?
No. So the point where I want to come in again is that India, Pakistan, and China are not after the land of Kashmir. They're after something very specific, which is becoming scarce and scarce in the world as the day passes by, which is water, which is the rivers which originate from Kashmir and flow into the Punjab of India, into the Punjab of Pakistan. I mean, you will be surprised to know that the power generation only from the Indian administered Kashmir could be up to 20,000 megawatt. Similarly, Pakistan has 31 dams in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So just from that point of view, you can understand where the dispute is going, where the dispute is and where the dispute is being led to. And this is where China has also come in, because the Indus River starts from Tibet. What do you think you can do to highlight these points as Conservative Friends of Kashmir?
Well, I think what we can do is we can start a debate within the Conservative Party about some of the issues that you've highlighted. As I said to you earlier, I think China are an aggressive power when it comes to territorial ambitions as well as economics. And so what you've said about water and the natural resources of Kashmir, I did understand that, and I do accept that that's a significant issue here. However, what I want to do more than anything, and what the Conservative Friends of Kashmir is all about, is about creating, as I said before, creating an avenue by which the Kashmiri diaspora here in the UK can join the Conservative Party and talk about some of the issues you've talked about, as well as human rights abuses. That's why we've set up, that's why the organisation's been relaunched, that's why it exists, and that's why I hope it will continue to thrive.
I'm going to go on to that part about talking about the Kashmiris in the UK, whether they are Kashmiri Muslims or Kashmiri Pandits. But one more thing before I want to go to that part is that in June 2011, the Jammu and Kashmir government in India was going to hire an independent consultancy company to tell them how much revenue loss is happening because of the water and because of the electricity which is being generated in Jammu and Kashmir and being given to India. Now, that is another point maybe you could highlight in Conservative Friends of Kashmir. There is a lot of talk about this exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from the valley in the 90s. What can be done to counter this narrative from your end, from the Conservative Friends of Kashmir?
What clearly happened very recently is there are two articles, 370 and 35A, that guaranteed certain autonomous rights for the area of Kashmir and Jammu that's governed by India. Those rights and those historic rights were often about settlement and about who can settle in that part of the world have been revoked. And they've been revoked for some very important reasons, some of which we talked about a few minutes ago. But those issues around settlement, etc., are incredibly clear. Now, I understand that there are issues around people from Kashmir and Jammu who left in the 90s. But I think what's important is that we need a lasting settlement by which everybody who has an interest in Kashmir and Jammu, and those who are living there, most importantly, those who are living there, can respect and can live in what I said earlier, can live in peace, stability, and economic security. And that involves everybody, no matter what background they have.
So Conservative Friends of Kashmir is a platform whereby you're going to educate the people of UK and the world at large of what is happening in Kashmir and what happened in Kashmir, which is leading to the events right now.
No, as I said to you earlier, what the Conservative Friends of Kashmir is all about is an avenue by which the Kashmiri diaspora in the UK can join the Conservative Party and feel at home in the Conservative Party and talk about issues back home and what happened in Kashmir and Jammu, and that involves all people and all issues.
Okay. We were talking about Article 370 and Article 35A, which was revoked last year on 5th of August. So after that, the lockdown which happened, what kind of human rights do you think you will be talking about, which were curtailed for the whole of Jammu and Kashmir for over 8 months?
Okay, the freedom of assembly, the freedom to be able to communicate with the outside world, the freedom to be able to get on and live your life. There are also a number of people who have been detained in Kashmir and Jammu, and I don't think nobody who's with any sort of objectivity would turn around and say there have not been human rights abuses in Kashmir. And we stand, as I say, with hundreds of millions of people in the world, persons of Indian origin, who share these concerns too. This is not simply an issue on one side. We share, I think everybody's got an interest in human rights abuses and upholding human rights law.
The government of India says that everything is fine in Kashmir, and there is now more development which is happening before Article 370 was revoked. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I'm sure they do, and I would urge the Indian government to allow international observers into Kashmir and Jammu, and allow them to determine the extent of human rights abuses in that part of the world. But this is not I don't think anybody, as I said to you earlier, with an interest in the area or remote knowledge about the area will think that human rights abuses have not gone on in that part of the world. What we need to do is shine a light on those things and allow people to discuss these issues and be aware and create greater awareness of these issues here in the UK. The Conservative Friends of Kashmir, as I've said a million times before in this interview, is about ensuring those of Kashmiri origin have an avenue into the Conservative Party and can talk about issues in that part of the world. That's what we hope to achieve.
Like yourself, the ex-chief minister of Jammu and Kashmir in one of his interviews said, and this is a section which the Indian government has put on Kashmir right now, the section 144, in which you cannot have a congregation of more than 5 people. And he said, if you remove this article, hundreds and thousands of people will come on the roads and they will start protesting against the revocation of Article 370. Do you think Conservative Friends of Kashmir will be supporting something like this?
The Conservative Friends of Kashmir, we're a small organisation formed of Conservative Party sympathisers in the UK. I think I'm not sure the Indian government are necessarily going to pay any attention to what we say and do. We're not going to make grandiose statements about what we feel the Indian government should do because it's beyond our remit. We're an organisation by which people can come into the Conservative Party and talk about that part of the region and spread awareness. We're certainly not an organisation who will be sending letters to the Indian government or to the Indian High Commissioner or anything like that, because it would be above my pay grade.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant that Conservative Friends of Kashmir will be talking about such issues. That is my question. My question is not that the Conservative Friends of Kashmir has to write to the government or the Indian High Commission here.
Conservative Friends of Kashmir, I'm sure, will talk about all sorts of issues related to what's going on in Jammu and Kashmir, and I dare say they'll talk about all sorts of issues that are going on here in the UK and affect the Kashmiri diaspora in the UK.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. And one last question before we go is that there was a protest outside the Indian High Commission for Kashmir after the revocation of Article 370. Is that something that you think should be supported?
The Conservative Friends of Kashmir are not going to form policy issues and things like this. It's, as I say, it's just an avenue by which we can talk about issues that affect that part of the world and open up the Conservative Party to people of the Kashmiri diaspora. And I say we stand with the hundreds of millions of people around the world of Indian origin who have an interest in human rights abuses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bristow, for your time. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.